I just took a minute and scraped down my palette because it's getting so messy. And I wanted to show you what I do in my studio. So I made this mixture of gray. I took all the scrapings from my palette and piled it into one pile here and mixed it all up, and it gives me this beautiful gray that I can use later to mix into things. So the next thing I want to do is paint this cliff back here, which is a nice deep bluish gray. So I can start with this, and then my procedure for coming to the right color mixture is I first ask myself, does this need to be lighter or darker? And I would say it's a pretty good value. Then does it need to be warmer or cooler? And I would say this needs to be cooler. And then I answer my next question, does it need to have more red, more yellow, or more blue mixed in? And it needs to have a little more blue. So that's a 3-step process for coming to the correct color mixture that you should really memorize. Okay, so here's this nice deep gray, and I'm going to put that along the back here where this cliff is. And I'm just kind of smoothing it in with my knife like it's one big shape. And I am going to go over it and give it quite a bit of detail. And I'm going to blend this cliff color right up into this greenery. I mean, not greenery, my green shape. And I'm going to take a few strokes of it with the back of my knife and just pull it across here. Like so, all the way across, because there are some gray bushes mixed in with this greenery. And I'm going to bring this over a little further, and then I'm going to mix some more ultramarine and Madder Lake in here. And that's a bit too dark, so I'm mixing this whole mixture together. And I'm going to put that in for the shadowy section of the dark cliff. And I'm going to stand back and take a look and see how that looks. And that looks good. So you see how we're starting to frame the foreground by what we're putting into the background? So I'm going to put a really dark edge down here where the cliff meets the ocean. So I'm going to use cadmium red light and ultramarine blue. And I'm going to put that right along the bottom. And I'm going to wiggle my knife a little bit as I pull it from left to right. I'm wiggling it up and down just to give me some of that craggy textured look that I see in the cliff. And I'm pulling some of these strokes up into the gray like this to capture some of that texture. So by having a very light touch and painting wet paint on top of wet paint, I'm able to capture this texture with my knife. If I push down too hard, I would end up painting over all the light gray paint, and I don't want to do that. I just want to pick up a little bit of it, or I want my canvas to pick up a little bit of it on the back of the knife just by the parts of the thicker paint that are sticking up. So you really want to learn to work with your paint so it becomes, so it makes painting easier, becomes your friend in the process. So there's our nice craggy cliff, and it's matching up now with these reflections. I think I'll extend this one down a little bit. Okay, so I'm going to put some more of that color of the cliffs into the cliffs. Right now it's all very gray. So I'm going to put just a hint of yellow. So I'm using cadmium yellow deep, titanium white, and a little bit of this cadmium red light. And this is going to be a kind of a grayed down, kind of an ugly yellow, very natural looking yellow. And we're going to put just a hint of that into the gray on the cliffs. You don't want this to be too bright, but you want to just add that extra little something to them. And you can see that color in the reflection down below. So you definitely want for that to make sense visually. I'll put a little more over here. And you want these cliffs to each be different from each other in terms of color and shape and so on. Now this rock here at the end doesn't have a dark line under it, and it's really missing that. So I've just added that dark line, and it also needs a little bit of a kind of a foot at the end. There. All right, working our way back now. I want to move on to mixing up these green colors back here on this distant cliffs. I'm mixing permanent green deep and cadmium lemon. And I'm going to pull my knife across, putting on the paint pretty thickly. And I'm just painting in and around those gray marks that I made. Now don't worry if you paint through your tree trunk, because you're going to paint that on top of it later anyway. And once again, if you drew that in and you're worried about losing your drawing, hopefully you've taken a picture of it, or you can refer to my drawing. So I'm pulling some more of that green across here. And I'm going to stand back and take a look. Now I'm going to mix a little bit brighter, cool yellow. So I've mixed just cadmium lemon with white. And I'm going to pull some of that across here. So value creates dimension. I know I keep repeating that, but that's the reason for mixing varieties of color. And we want to show how pretty this place is. All right, so there's the yellowy greens, and now there's bits of grayish red mixed in also. All the colors of the rainbow are in this one clip. So I'm going to use Madder Lake, ultramarine blue, a little bit of titanium white. I need a little more titanium white. It's a very light, sort of a pinkish gray. And I'm going to put some of that color in here too. That's a little too pink. Sometimes when you put the first stroke of color down, it's important to take a look at what you've done before you put it all down, and you may need to adjust like I just did. So very lightly, just kind of touching with the back of my knife, just trying to leave some textured little blotches of this beautiful violet gray amongst the green. So now our cliff has a really nice amount of texture. Now I'm going to do these rocks after I put in the ocean. So I'm going to put in the ocean first and the sky, and then I'm going to paint these rocks and this tree, and then we're going to go in and figure out how to add some final details to make sure this painting has that real feeling of China Cove. The reason I want to paint these rocks last is because they are visually in front of the ocean. And if we painted the ocean first, we can paint the rocks physically with paint over the ocean, and it will help the ocean recede. It'll help it look like it's further in the distance. Whereas if we have to bring the ocean up around the rocks, we're going to have to manipulate our edge, and it's going to be more work. So, not that I'm against more work, but it won't look as fresh either as a painting. So I'm going to mix ultramarine blue and titanium white, and I'm going to get a very tiny bit of primary magenta, and I'm going to pull that color out. By the way, I picked up a bigger knife. I'm not sure which size this is because it's been rubbed off, but it's definitely a bigger knife. I'll show you how much bigger it is than the other one. This is the one I was using earlier. Now I'm using this bigger one. Why am I using a bigger one? Because it's faster and I can get smoother strokes, and this ocean is just sort of straight across, not a lot of detail, and I just want to pull some nice strokes straight across. just like that. Now I'm going to smooth them out, which I sometimes like to do, especially, you know, lines flatten out as they go back in space. So I really wanted to have this ocean look sort of very much in the distance, and so there we are. And I painted some of that blue through the tree on purpose. Now do you see how adding this deep blue, all of a sudden this turquoise really starts to sing out? Now let's put in the sky. I'm going to scrape this off here, put it down here with my other gray. So I'm going to get permanent green deep, ultramarine blue, and titanium white. And I remember I want to make a turquoise that's lighter and cooler than the turquoise in the water. So one of the great things about painting with a knife is you can put that paint right up on your knife and hold your knife up to the actual paint that's on the canvas, and I can see that this is too dark. So I'm going to use about all the white I have left and mix that up here. I need to stop and squeeze out some more white.